Welcome to our exploration of the water vascular system in Starfish. Imagine a creature with no brain, no bones, and no traditional muscles, yet it possesses the terrifying strength to pry open heavily armored prey. Today, we will discover how starfish harness the simple physics of water pressure to become relentless apex predators of the ocean floor. Let us dive in. To understand how a starfish moves, think of a massive construction excavator on a building site. The excavator does not use muscles, it uses hydraulic tubes filled with pressurized fluid to lift heavy loads with untiring power. A starfish uses this exact same brilliant engineering principle. However, instead of artificial hydraulic fluid, it simply uses the ocean water surrounding it. This biological plumbing network is called the water vascular system, and it converts fluid pressure into immense mechanical work. Now that we know the starfish uses hydraulics, let us trace how the water actually flows through its body. The system begins at the top of the starfish with a small sieve-like plate called the madreporite, which filters the ocean water. This clean water flows downward through a vertical tube known as the stone canal, emptying into a central distribution hub called the ring canal. From this central ring, the pressurized fluid is pushed outward into long radial canals that run straight down the center of each of the starfish's 5 arms. Following the water down the radial canals, we reach the true engines of this system. The water fills thousands of tiny, balloon-like muscular bulbs called ampullae. When these ampullae contract, they squeeze the water downward into the tube feet. Because water cannot be compressed, this internal pressure forces the tube feet to extend outward and grip surfaces. By coordinating thousands of these tiny hydraulic pistons, the starfish can walk across the ocean floor, capture its prey, and even absorb oxygen to breathe. Let us look at this schematic to visualize the entire network we just discussed. At the top, you can see the madreporite, where ocean water enters, flowing down the stone canal into the circular ring canal in the center. Notice the blue arrows showing the water being distributed into the 5 radial canals. Along these canals, you can clearly see the clusters of round ampullae sitting just above the tube feet. This diagram beautifully illustrates how a central water supply is channeled to operate thousands of individual hydraulic legs simultaneously. With this anatomy in mind, why is this specific system so crucial for survival? Without it, a starfish would be completely immobilized, as it lacks the bones and muscles found in most animals. Instead, this hydraulic system turns them into apex predators. When a starfish attacks a clam, it attaches its tube feet to the shell and pulls. While the clam uses traditional muscles to stay shut, those muscles will eventually fatigue and give out. The starfish, however, is just maintaining water pressure. Its hydraulic feet can pull for hours without ever getting tired, guaranteeing a meal. To truly appreciate this predatory power, we must look at the physics. The force generated by a single tube foot is governed by a simple hydraulic equation. F1 equals P times A. Here, F1 is the mechanical force exerted by the foot, measured in newtons. P stands for the internal hydrostatic pressure generated when the ampulla squeezes, measured in pascals. Finally, A represents the cross-sectional area of the foot's contact surface in square meters. Physically, this means if the starfish squeezes the ampulla harder, increasing pressure, the pulling force increases. Similarly, a wider tube foot with a larger area will also produce a proportionally larger force. Let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. Imagine a starfish trying to open a mussel. We are given that the ampulla contracts to create an internal pressure of 2,000 pascals. The circular tip of the tube foot has an area of 0.00005 square meters. We want to find the exact pulling force of this single foot. We start with our blueprint equation, F1 equals P times A. By substituting our known values, we multiply 2,000 by the area. This gives us a final answer of 0.1 newtons. While this seems incredibly weak, remember, this is just a single microscopic action. Now that we have calculated force, what if we need to work backward? Suppose we know the physical force required to open a shell, and we want to find out how hard the starfish must squeeze its ampullae. We start with our standard equation, F1 equals P times A. To isolate the pressure P, we divide both sides of the equation by the cross-sectional area A. The area cancels out on the right side, leaving us with P equals F1 divided by A. This algebraic manipulation is powerful because it allows us to translate a required physical output back into the necessary biological input. Since a single tube foot only produces a tiny amount of force, the starfish relies on teamwork. This brings us to our second formula, Ft equals N times F1. Here, Ft represents the combined total pulling force exerted on the prey. The variable N is simply the total number of tube feet actively pulling, and F1 is the force of a single foot we just learned to calculate. This simple multiplication shows that the total pulling power scales up linearly. If the starfish engages more tube feet, the value of N increases, and the total force becomes overwhelming, easily defeating the strong muscles of a clam. Let us put everything together to see how a starfish breaches a clam's defenses. We are given that a longe clam requires a continuous total force of 40 newtons to open. The starfish attaches 500 tube feet, each with an area of 0.00004 square meters. We need to find the internal pressure the starfish must generate. First, we divide the total force of 40 newtons by the 500 active feet. This tells us each foot must exert 0.08 newtons. Next, we use our rearranged pressure formula, dividing this individual force by the area. The result is 2,000 pascals. If the starfish maintains this internal water pressure, the clam will eventually fail. Having calculated the exact pressures involved, it is clear why this biological system is so fascinating beyond just marine biology. The water vascular system perfectly bridges the gap between biology and fluid mechanics. In fact, human engineers actively study this exact mechanism. By understanding how a starfish moves without bones, engineers are designing advanced soft robotics and underwater exploration vehicles. Instead of relying on rigid metal gears that can easily break or jam in harsh environments, these new machines move using fluid pressure, directly mimicking the brilliant, untiring hydraulics of the starfish. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us review our key takeaways. First, we learned that starfish rely on a unique water vascular system, using ocean water as hydraulic fluid to move and hunt. Second, we saw how muscular ampullae create internal pressure to extend thousands of tiny tube feet. Third, we proved mathematically that the force of a single foot depends on pressure and area, and that hundreds of feet working together generate massive total force. Finally, we understand that this non-tiring hydraulic grip is the ultimate evolutionary tool, allowing a brainless creature to pry open heavily armored prey. Great job following along with the physics of biology today.